The internet left older generations behind. You probably think I'm gonna talk about how like Gen Xers and boomers hop on Reddit or Facebook and leave snarky remarks all up in the comments, but I want to be a little more specific and analytical so we can discuss the ever evolving topic of how AI is basically making older generations like brain dead. And I know you've heard the whole AI spiel like a billion times, but look, the other day I opened Facebook for literally 5 seconds. I clicked this one Facebook reel in my homepage, and it was clearly AI. Like to me, at least, it was detectable within half a second. And it was this big lifted pickup truck hurtling down an icy, snowy road towards like a Ferrari or something. Clearly AI. Convincing if you're not paying attention, but clearly AI if you look at it for like more than like a second. Either way, bro. Yeah, I opened the comments and like everyone's grandmother is in there saying stuff like, "OMG, hope everyone's okay." And there were like old dudes talking about how like you shouldn't be driving a Ferrari in this weather. And I'm just like, bro, we are so cooked. Like, I mean, luckily there were a couple comments pointing out that it was AI to the people who didn't recognize it, but for the most part, people genuinely believed it, and they weren't bots, they were real people. And that's what scared me. Not because the video was convincing, because it was far from that, but because so many of the comments, who I assume to be brain dead boomers, never even questioned whether it was real or not. They just took it at face value, left a useless comment, and moved on. But it gets even worse because I think this clear AI slop content impacts far more than just gullible boomers. Like, let's move up one generation and talk about Gen X, like my parents. Both my parents are Gen X, so they're in their like 50s right now. And bro, my own father has shown me multiple AI clips from YouTube Shorts and been dying laughing at them. And I can't even laugh along because it genuinely scares and concerns me. Because this dude is not that old. He was born and raised in the 70s. He watched the introduction of household computers in the 80s. He experienced the beginning of the World Wide Web that we know as the internet today in the 90s. And he saw the release of the first modern mainstream smartphone in the early 2000s. So having an idea of his past and knowing the field of work he's in currently, I'd expect him to be a little less gullible or naive when it comes to detecting content that is clearly AI. Like, I guess, sure, he's up there in age, but he's not old like fucking boomer old. But yet, he genuinely still laughs at the type of videos that Gen Zs like myself would giggle at ironically or make fun of or just automatically scroll past. But that's what got me thinking. Gen Z immediately questions whether or not something online is fake, whereas older generations tend to automatically assume that it's real. So, with that in mind, we can kind of make a connection here. Boomers and Gen X grew up in a world full of physical media and analog technology, meaning that taking photos or videos, editing them, publishing them, etc., took like hella skill and like hours of work. Basically, if there was something on film or TV back then, even if it looked fake, it almost certainly happened in real life so they could record it and publish it. Meanwhile, us Gen Zs just kind of grew up on the internet when technology was already relatively advanced and just let us have whatever we want whenever we wanted it. I mentioned this briefly in a previous video. We grew up with Snapchat filters and Photoshop, which could manipulate digital media in a fraction of the time that it would take a boomer to do so in their era. So, knowing that, it's kind of clear that our default setting as Gen Zs is skepticism because we know how easy it is to fake things online. On the other hand, I think the older generations have a bit of a blind spot when it comes to this sort of stuff. First, like I said a moment ago, they grew up in a truth by default era where media was published by trusted outlets, and now they treat the modern internet the same way as if everything's trustworthy when clearly it is not. Second, I guess, modern algorithms constantly show users what they want to see, meaning that when an older person sees something AI generated that aligns with their views, whether that be social or political or whatever else, they immediately believe it and interact with it. Basically, meaning the algorithm weaponizes or like takes advantage of their lifetime habit of trusting visual evidence in media and just keeps feeding them more and more bullshit. But I guess third or last of this section or whatever the fuck you want to call it, the older generations don't have the same built-in digital filter. Like Gen Z and millennials constantly interact with spam, bots, AI, clickbait, ragebait, etc. And we kind of just have a muscle memory for getting the fuck out when we spot that sort of stuff. I pronounce that odd. Anyway, the elderly just kind of don't have that filter and won't spot when something has like six fingers instead of five. But Look, as much as I can dog on boomers for being brain dead, they are not all to blame, because after all, this video does partially revolve around AI and how it's impacted the human mind and digital space. So it only makes sense for me to provide an example of my own to demonstrate that with or without AI, young or old, people online are just kind of brain dead. So my Instagram feed likes to get a little political on occasion. I'm not going to discuss the specifics here, but in short, I open the comments and I see people arguing over the dumbest stuff imaginable. Most of the time, the post will clearly be in support of, like, one political party or one side, yet people still choose to intentionally start arguments. But, like, here's the issue. As much as I want to believe they're real people, albeit pretty NPC, I genuinely would not be surprised to learn if a decent portion of the comments are AI generated rage bait under those political videos, or any videos for that matter at this point. And the funniest thing is, the comments will have hundreds of replies under each, with people wasting their time arguing over something that might not have even been written by a real human being. Like, is this literally not the dead internet theory in action? But fucking either way, it makes me wonder how many online interactions are genuinely real people. Because if older generations can be fooled by mediocre AI videos like the one I mentioned at the start, how much of the content that I consume, or we, everybody, I guess, is just better or less detectable AI? But it's both interesting to see yet terrifying to experience how AI is becoming harder to detect every year. And I know we've all heard that like a million times, but it's the truth. If it wasn't obvious already, bots are becoming more human, fake engagement is probably around every corner, and it's going to eventually be pretty difficult to distinguish genuine stuff from AI. And that's not even related to the older generations, that's more of a global concern at this point. But the focus here is still about the boomers and older Gen Xs who seem to be inept when it comes to operating modern electronics, meaning they are still incredibly susceptible to bad shit on the internet. But moving on, I feel like I could complain about boomers and even some Gen X, like my parents, because God knows. I feel like I could complain about them for hours on end, not because a large portion are incapable of using modern technology, but they seem to just struggle with adapting. I feel like that makes things even more confusing or funny depending on how you look at it, because the modern technology that we know today has already been out for the better part of like a decade and a half. It's like the only piece of technology that still seems to confuse a lot of the older generations is AI, and the ones that do understand it trust it way too much and overuse it and abuse the hell out of it. And it's funny. AI is never taken accountable for any of its actions, but whatever, that's a discussion for another day. Either way, the funniest part is the ideas of AI were studied as early as like the 1950s, which was when the boomers came around. That's when they were born. And the AI models we know today, like ChatGPT, like the mainstream ones, have been mainstream, I guess, for the better part of 6 years, since around the pandemic, I think. And I mean, there was probably AI before that, but I'm just talking about when they became mainstream. So either way, in the end, I keep coming back to the same conclusion regarding the older generations. They aren't necessarily stupid when it comes to modern tech. Christ. But they refuse to adapt. They refuse to adapt because they still see the internet for what it was like 20 years ago in the early 2000s. Back then, seeing something online usually meant that it happened, like it actually happened in real life. Talking to someone online meant they were usually a real person. Watching a video meant that someone actually recorded it. But unfortunately, none of those assumptions are safe anymore. The people who don't question what they see nowadays are the ones who get scammed, the ones who spread misinformation, and the ones who will inevitably lose the ability to tell what is real and what is not. But ultimately, who's to say our generation won't end up the exact same? I'm talking, Gen Zs, maybe some of the younger millennials, I don't know, maybe Gen Alpha even. God, who knows? I'm willing to bet, though, that 25 years from now, there will be some new magical technology that Gen Z simply cannot understand or comprehend, and the younger generations will call us all old and stupid, the same way that we currently view the generations older than us. So, really, this might not be a problem with specifically boomers or AI in the end, but more of an issue with the fact that technology advances faster than people. But, as always, time will tell. Thank you for watching. Good night.